So our next speaker is Manminder Singh. The topic is deliver right content at the right time to the right people on the right device. We all do wonder, right, how to deliver the right content at the right time and the right people. So this is what is this session all about, and about Manminder Singh. He's the project solutions consultant for Adobe Technical Communications and learning line of products. So he has been working with Adobe for more than 4 years and specializes in Adobe RoboHelp. So RoboHelp and Adobe Captivate. RoboHelp Server and Adobe Captivate. Manminder is an expert in providing solutions to the clients and also guides them through best practices to create and deliver content using the right tools. So over to you, Manminder. All the best.
Thank you for the introduction. Right. So hello, everyone. I hope you had some amazing sessions and we were able to capture at most from these sessions, right? And I'm sure, given the knowledge that was imparted by most of my fellow speakers, maybe we could just go back home and try out, implement the same practices in our organizations as well. Now, like she rightly said, so my name is Manminder Singh and I'm the solution consultant with Adobe, specifically focusing upon both the products that focus on technical documentation as well as how you can improve your learning departments within the organization, right? So in this session, I will be majorly talking about how you could provide personalized experience. So my session would not be just focusing upon how to actually create or curate the content, but rather it's about the end audience who is actually consuming this content. How can we make it much more easier and try and ensure that the lesser the time they spend on our content, because the amount of content that we idly deal with, what kind of complexities do they run into idly. So the personalized experience, right content to the right people at the right time, and even on the right devices. So I would say this is one of the things which matters the most, and I would say this has been a practice for most of the businesses, irrespective of whatsoever vertical they fall into, right? I would say it's a secret about that's after every successful business, right? Tailoring the content, tailoring the experience according to the kind of audience that we ideally deal with. And that's essentially one of the practices that we can also have in our content, irrespective of whatsoever the solution that we use. And you could help your audience, find the right content at the right time. And how it actually happens is something, so these are the key components that I personally feel that play a crucial role when it comes to providing a personalized experience. So how can we provide the right information, something that is pertaining to a department, or I would say in our cases, roles, different regions that we deal with, or the different client sets that we deal with, preferred channels. Some people would want to consume it on computers. Maybe there are some organizations who are more likely on the field, and it's not really possible for them to consume the information on the computer. So maybe why not give them the capability to have it available on their devices, right? So you have the scope, and slowly and steadily I see that there is a huge increase of consuming the information on the mobile device. So that's again one of the things that you could also have with your content, right? So whatsoever the content that you are designing, now you could make it adaptable on any screen size and make it available on any of the devices that exist. Then at the right time. So I would say these are some of the things that ideally relate with the time, how we can make it much more convenient for our users. Not only just to find the information, but also how they could get that information. Now, I'll show you a quick examples of how exactly the other organizations are trending towards personalized approach and maybe making it much more convenient and making it much more easier for the people to find the content. So I would say these are some of the examples. So one of the techniques that you would find quite often in most of the search engines, right? Like Google, Bing, what are they essentially doing? It's like a place wherein you have a massive amount of data, and for them to actually cater the right data to you, they have to come up with some kind of capabilities that would enable you to find the right content. And in this case, what I'm showing you is a predictive search, right? An algorithm that runs in the back end that essentially helps you to see what kind of scope do you have when it comes to finding the right information, what type of information ideally exists, and how you could access it. The next example that you would see on my screen is majorly an example that is used in most of the e-commerce websites, right? Again, one of the example wherein we see that there is a plethora of information that we see, right, irrespective of the kinds of products, the kind of information that they have. So again, how they are personalizing this approach, how they are making it convenient for us, for our end users, is by giving them the capability to find and look as in what type of information that they would want to do. Now, this is something that ideally does not happen as of now in most of the organizations. I still see, as an authors, we run into situations wherein we have to make a decision as in what is that to be delivered to the people. But now, instead of being on that side, what we could do is actually we could make it convenient for them to make the choices of their own, unless and until we are not dealing with the confidential set of information. But this, in fact, helps you out in order to reduce down the time that's involved in order to get the decisions done. Now, how this actually ties and how this actually works with our solution. So this is something, so I would be focusing on how you could do it via Adobe RoboHelp. But this is something that we have incorporated in both the solutions, as in RoboHelp, as in FrameMaker. So even though if you are using FrameMaker in your organization, so I would say this is something that is applicable for all of you from 2015 release onwards. So by a quick show of hands, if I could get a quick idea as in how many people are using the Adobe solutions as of now in this room? Okay. And how many of them are, so I would say that's quite less number. But this is essentially a solution to give you the idea, if you are planning to get started with any of the solution that enables you to create technical content, right? So this is the starting phase wherein you get to create or get started with the content. So Adobe RoboHelp is essentially a solution that would allow you to create a topic-based content, which makes it much more easier for you to reuse the information, and once you have reused the content, you are able to have it delivered onto different devices. Now, how is it helping you? So the key criteria, I would say the key focus in this product, or even if I say as an Adobe, that what we are focusing on is how we can help your audience find the content in a much less amount of time, right? And how we are achieving to do that is making search much more powerful and giving the capabilities somewhat similar to dynamic content filtering, wherein the users could now make the decisions on their own. Again, so the content that you would be generating would be published in HTML5 outputs, again consumable on any device that ranges from the large screen desktops to the small screen mobile phones. It's adaptable. The content experience remains same irrespective of whatsoever the device the user uses on their end. You also have the capability to generate mobile apps, so you don't have to deal with any kind of coding. You can generate apps for iOS as well as Android. So if you are dealing with clients wherein they don't have really a scope of providing the online information to their users, they can actually go ahead, create a content that is packaged in the form of an app, which the people could actually download from the respective stores, and they would be able to consume that information. In fact, I would share one of an example. I came across one of the clients, firefighting department in US, and they heavily rely on to mobile apps because they have these strict policies and procedures and the actions they have to take place in that particular situation. So for them to always always follow those guidelines, it is much more easier for them using mobile apps. So they don't have to be connected to the online platform. They could just have these apps on their devices and they are able to provide that information to their people who are serving the people. Now, again, this is one of the key things that we all believe, and this is something that RoboHelp essentially does. Anything that you create, and if you are dealing with product-based help, so you can actually have it tied with your product, and irrespective of whether your help has to be available online or even if it's offline. So there are different kinds of approaches that you can take as an organization and assist your users to as in what exactly they would find in your content. Now these are essentially a typical set of users who use RoboHelp. And I'll just go ahead and skip. So some of the enhancements that we did, so if you are planning to go ahead and adapt this solution, so we completely revamped the UI. So if you are using Word or you are familiar to any of these solutions, it's now much more easier for you to transition from those platforms to Adobe RoboHelp. You have the ribbon-based UI, which makes it similar. You have a quick access toolbar, pretty much similar to what we've been using in Word so far. Then you can ingest any type of content. So it's not really just the Word and the PDFs. The scope is much more if you're dealing with data or if you have departments dealing with data content. And now, because I see there is an ask that how we can come up with a solution that essentially has all the information sitting at one place, right? Irrespective of whatsoever the kind of documentation that we are dealing with. So using this, what you could do is, essentially all of your users or the different teams who are using different kinds of tools to build this information, you can have all that information right in one place and you could come up with a unified solution that would help your audience find that information. Then you have the multi-publishing option. So all in all, there are like 17 different outputs you can generate that have the scope for HTML5 to mobile apps, printed documentation, anything that you would want to generate. So it pretty much covers all the sets of devices that we have across the globe. Kindle, ebooks, EPUBs, and so on. You can generate all of it using Adobe RoboHelp, and you need not to rely on to any other solution. Now, when I talk about personalized experience, right, so what is it that RoboHelp does? Because I discussed about the different examples, what exactly the other organizations are doing. Now, as an authors, we also have the same kind of capabilities that we could leverage in our solutions if we are using Adobe RoboHelp or FrameMaker. And this is something that you would find. So now you have a frameless experience. So instead of having a topic-based content wherein we used to offer people with, this is the repository, just select the kind of information that you would want to access. So it's more search-driven now. People could actually go ahead, look for the keywords, and they are able to find out the information. And this is what exactly RoboHelp does. So this is a help center example that I'm showing you right now. So it's more search-driven instead of topic-driven. People could actually look for the keywords, and they are able to find the information. Then you have a predictive search. Now, the way this predictive search has been designed, so there is a special algorithm that is there, and this is something that is built out of the box. You don't have to deal with any kind of coding. So what you are seeing on my screen is an example wherein if somebody looks for a particular term in your documentation, it not just only suggests the user that what is it that really exists, but also, let's say we have some terminologies that are specific to our industries, it autocorrects them. And these suggestions, they change automatically basis the positions of the pointers that are provided. So every time the kind of information that the users would want to look for, they don't have to type more number of keys in order to get that information. It is something that suggests them. They are able to see what kind of scope is available and what kind of information exists within your documentation. Then again, talking about the dynamic content filtering, and this is how RoboHelp essentially does it. So we deal with different departments, we deal with different roles. So this is something that is completely configurable. And what you are seeing on my end is essentially an example wherein I am giving my users the capability to pick and choose what they feel is best for them. But you also have the scope, as in to ensure, let's say if a person from a particular department accesses your content, you could pass these filters in the URLs itself, ensuring that if somebody is accessing from this department, they would be able to access or view this information. So this is also one of the helpful things that you could do. So on my end, I have the filters based on company roles, travel type, country locations. But in your case, it could be the products, it could be the client types, it could be anything that you would want. And this is something that works on the top of conditional build tags, so that if you are using, if you are dealing with different kinds of documentation, you could just leverage the same tags onto the filters. Then you have something called bookmarks and favorites. Now this is very old concept, but yet does not exist in most of the solutions, wherein if you are looking for an information, ideally the first thing that we would end up doing is that we have to go through a search, find the information, and then next day, let's say if I come back to office again, I would have to repeat the same thing, right? Which is again time consuming if I'm dealing with document that's ranging from hundreds to thousands of pages. So now what you could do is, what your users could essentially do, they could just bookmark and they'll have this information readily at their doorstep. So the next time when they access your documentation, they would be able to see all those bookmarks and they could just simply access them straight from the homepage itself. Now this is one of the areas that I wanted to focus upon. Still I see that there is a huge demand, and this is one of the areas wherein I personally feel as an authors we lack at, and one of the capabilities that we would want to have as in to see how people are actually consuming our content and how we could improve that content. Technically right now, in order to achieve this thing, I've seen organizations incorporating different kinds of technologies like Google Analytics, right? But then you have to rely on to experts who can help you out in order to embed those codes in order to make it actually effective. But in order to achieve this, you have to have a kind of an infrastructure on your end. You have to have a resources. You have to be dependent on these resources to make it successful. Right? But in this case, what I'm showing you and what I'm discussing about, there is another set of solution that we offer that's called Adobe RoboHelp Server. It's something that works along with both RoboHelp as well as FrameMaker. Now, what it essentially does is any type of content that you design, any type of content that you have, you can have it hosted. So it's a solution that not only just allows you to host, deliver, but also allows you to track or analyze your content, how exactly and people are consuming it. What is it that you could do? Because as an author, we are just more focused on how easily and quickly we can provide and share that information with our users. But there is a question that always strikes my mind, and I'm sure that even strikes yours as well, that is it even solving the purpose, the reason why we are creating the documentation? Are the people able to find and locate the content or not? I would say this is one of the important asks that I've seen. So I would say when it comes to analyzing, now this is one of the pretty straightforward and most important examples that I'm going to share with you. Search term with no results. This is one of the reports that you could generate. Now, there is a case that happens wherein we have a documentation and it's quite huge. People look for the terms, terminologies are different. Let's say if someone new joins into your organization and if they go for the information or they look for the information, they are not able to find that information. Now the possible use case could be that either they are using the wrong set of keywords, they're not able to find the information, which is something that I see quite often happening. Now in this case, what you could essentially do is, let's say if somebody, so a typical example is that let's say you have a content created on airplane documentation. Now instead of airplane, your users are looking for aircraft. Same thing, but different words, right? So how is it, now you as an author, you believe that you have that information, but the users are not able to access it. So what you could do is you could generate a report. You could see how exactly and what exactly is the user that they are looking for. You could go ahead, go back to your documentation, add that keyword, and the next time when the users look for that keyword, they would be routed to that particular information. So this way, they don't have to, so the gap that's there, you can actually close that gap. Frequently viewed topics, yes. I cannot hear you. Exactly.
So what does it mean? I mean, you are saying you can post your raw content on any FTP server, or you have to create a output PDF or HTML that you can host?
So this solution is ideally something that is hosted within your server, right? So this is something that is within your organization. So if you are using any servers like Windows Server, you can have it hosted. Now the type of content that allows you to get this kind of insight has to be either web help content, which is traditional HTML, and the responsive HTML5. So if you are generating, because this is something that I see organizations are majorly moving towards, right? How we can, have the updated content available to our customers at every possible time whenever we are coming up with the updates or any changes in the documentation, right? So this is something that works with responsive as well as traditional HTML.
It means that we are not giving any more PDFs. We can post somewhere and on a click they can access the PDF.
Exactly, exactly. So they can, now this is something that could also be accessed from within the product. So I see organizations have it with the product, or also they have it as a standalone website. So in Adobe, we have different practices. Let's say if somebody does not have an access to the machine on which they have the product from which they can access the documentation. So we have a separate knowledge base wherein the people could just go ahead and find that information. So you could work and you could try and think what exactly is the best approach for your use case, and you could have it the way that you want.
Because we have our dev.dot server, so we are using HTML files and we are hosting there. So similarly, that
Exactly.
you have provided within the framework you have given.
Exactly. So you have the capability. So right now, let's say if you are designing the content from RoboHelp and from FrameMaker, within the solutions, there is a connector that automatically hosts all those files onto RoboHelp server. And this is something that purely works only with these two solutions. So if you are creating the content, you could straight away host it onto RoboHelp server. So this way you don't have to rely onto your IT department, because at times we have to look for the permissions that whether we can host this content, who should be able to access the content. So all those things now can be managed from the technical documentation team's end, so that you don't have to really rely on the IT people. Again, one kind of a report. So frequently viewed topics. Now this is something that is extremely helpful in the cases wherein we have a huge documentation again. So what kind of documentation the people are most likely looking at, right? And what are the areas that you could actually focus? Maybe there could be two things. Either the people don't require this information, or this content needs to be improved. So this is something that gives you that insight. Okay, this is the information that the people are looking at. And probably these are the areas that we need to focus as a team, what should be available and whether we have to improve the content or maybe the navigations, how exactly the users are actually accessing the information. So you could optimize your documentation and have it available to your users and improve your documentation. Probably not focus on the areas which are not getting consumed by the users. Frequently searched terms, again the same so there are different kinds of ways that you could generate these reports, and these reports are something that you could export, share with your stakeholders, and improve. Pages per visit. So these are all in all different kinds of reports that are provided to you. This is something, yes?
So this analytics works only if they are hosting the published version on web server, or does it work on any other hosted environment?
So I would say what I'm discussing right now is about RoboHelp server, right? So this is something that is provided to you out of the box. But if you plan to have analytics with your documentation, so there are plenty of solutions that are available, like Google Analytics is there.
Yeah, but not provided by Adobe, right? Adobe supports analytics only with Robo server.
Exactly, that is correct. So these are different kinds of reports. Now what happens is all this data is something that is gathered by the database that actually stores your content. So these are the reports that we provide to you out of the box, but if you plan to generate more reports, you have an access to the database that actually gives you the flexibility to generate and come up with more reports to analyze and see how exactly your content is impacting your users. That's pretty much about it. So I would just want to see if there is any questions on how you could improve your content or anything that you have for analytics. Probably I can help you out with that. Yes?
Flap provides option to import Robo.
Exactly.
Provide option to import Flap.
So ideally we don't actually compare ourselves, because the kind of audience that we ideally deal with. So we have our products aligned to our audience, right? So if you have seen that there would be some capabilities that you would find common in RoboHelp and common in FrameMaker, right? So there is a reason behind this, because when we are in an organization, we come across with the user sets people who are much more technical, and then we come across with the user set that are actually getting started, right? So we don't actually bombard them with, that you have to get started with data and you have to do this. So the way we have designed our products is that if somebody is planning to get started with the technical documentation, probably the first thing that they would have to do is RoboHelp. And the connector is something that we don't provide out of the box, but if you are looking for one, so we have a couple of partners who design these connectors. So we can, but not really the kind of idea that we have in mind for our products.
General observation that a lot of new startups are also looking for crash.
Mhm.
Do you want to capture that market from the
See, I would say there is a reason behind this, because most of the people believe that, so there is a reason why we kept it different, right? The focus,
your own business decisions, but
exactly.
feedback I am giving you.
I understand. Yeah, we'll certainly look at it, but right now, even because the kind of user sets, obviously the organization look for try and invest less onto the solution and get the more flexibilities or more capabilities, right? But the ask is slightly different over here, because we have to, in the end, also make it for the people or convenient for the people who are actually designing the content, rather than enforcing them or bombarding them that you have to spend like 2 months, learn the product, and then create your documentation. The timeline would actually vary based on the kind of capabilities that you would want into your documentation. But certainly, I'll pass this feedback on to my product management team, because every now and then we come up with new technologies and we try and focus more and more how exactly we could improve the user experience in our products. And maybe down the line, you might be amazed to know what exactly we come up with. Exactly. Yes.
See, this is more on an organizational perspective.
Right.
So earlier on, when I started my career, so it was like when it comes to the point of tools. So FrameMaker for printed documents and RoboHelp for online help. So now when I go to my head, not the team head, the department head, who is totally unaware of what the writing team is doing. I mean, their focus is only on the output. So there is a product, you come with the output. So when I go and tell them that the output would be a printed documentation, which is a PDF, and I have the CHM, they don't understand that. And I tell them that it is either a PDF or an online help. So now you have FrameMaker and RoboHelp, which supports both the formats. So in that case, are they competitors within the same suite?
Well, I would say they're not really the competitors, right? So this has always been the focus. So like you rightly said, when it comes to online documentation or online help, RoboHelp is your go-to guy, right? When it comes to printed documentation, so you have much more control when it comes to printed, because I've seen manuals wherein people have incorporated 3D models, different kinds of digital assets that they would want to have, which still I would say is something that is not a focus area in RoboHelp. It's more focused towards when we are planning to come up with a knowledge base, or more like a help repository wherein the people could actually find and use the content. Now, we have tried to come up with the same, because we have given the same publishing options in FrameMaker as well, and there is a strong reason behind it, because most of the times we have seen organizations just for the publishing, people had to rely on to RoboHelp back in the past, right? So if I'm looking for publishing, FrameMaker only used to provide you the option for printing only, right? Either they had to use WebWorks or they had to use RoboHelp. But now, we made it easier for them, so that if you are not planning to go with the whole suite, probably let's say if you are planning to target both printed. So printed is something that still, if the person is planning to go towards FrameMaker, printed documentation is still something that holds much more of an importance. And the secondary thing is the online documentation. So that's the area wherein I still feel that FrameMaker is most likely a better use case as compared to RoboHelp. And again, the differentiation is basis the kind of audience, the kind of business objectives that you have in mind. So if you are aiming to go towards structured documentation, right? So I would never recommend you to go ahead with RoboHelp. Reason behind, because now the way the whole industry is emerging, you have data, you have XML, custom XMLs and so on. So that's certainly not a forte of RoboHelp, wherein you can have much more better control in FrameMaker itself, right? So I would say completely different focus areas when it comes to both the products, so I would not really consider them as the competitors within the suite.
So when we go, need to move to a tool, say like there are two different groups. One is talking about FrameMaker,
Right.
another one goes about RoboHelp. So when they point to the features, the main thing to impress the higher level management is about the output. So they come out like with, we have this in FrameMaker and the same in RoboHelp, which comes from two different teams.
Right.
So the management questions is, when both are having the same features, why do you want to purchase both? Why can't you choose one from the two?
Exactly. So I'll help you understand why even I would consider organizations to go towards FrameMaker. When you have a scope and a vision of structured documentation, if you are looking for that, FrameMaker is the best solution to go ahead with. If you are looking for printed documentation, again that would be FrameMaker. But if you are planning to come up, let's say you have recently set up a team and you don't want to actually load them with the capabilities that they would have to learn, because I do see that there is a learning curve that is involved with the FrameMaker solution. Whereas if I have to enable my team to quickly get started, RoboHelp is the solution that I would definitely go ahead with. And if you're just considering the publishing capabilities, I would still say, because if you don't have structured authoring as a vision in mind, and you don't see it that somewhere a few years down the line that's not the area that you would be focusing at. So I would say it's still, RoboHelp is one of the solutions that you as an organization should adapt, because it's something that would quickly enable you to create and come up with a documentation, irrespective of whatsoever the kind of documentation that you would want to create. So these are two major areas that I would look at if I would have been in your place.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other question?
We can go for one more question.
One more question and one gift. Yeah, so I have all the gifts lined up, but so I'm just trying to remember all those faces who actually asked the question so I can pass it on. So maybe once we are done, I can, yeah. So any question that you have in mind? Yeah, okay, so here we are. So only one candidate is eligible for one gift. If that's the reason why you are asking a question. Okay.
This question is not about FrameMaker or RoboHelp, it's
Okay.
about the PDF. I'm the only writer in my company, it's a startup company, so I use Word to author the documents. So when I was on leave one day, the developers were supposed to make some ad hoc changes to the Word documents and they were supposed to generate a PDF. But the thing is, the developers in my organization, they all use Mac. And Mac doesn't support Adobe Acrobat DC as well as efficiently as it supports Windows. So they had some problems generating PDF out of those Word documents, and they had to just send out the PDF to the customers as it is. So is there any way that you can efficiently manage both Mac as well as Windows?
So I would say the idea behind, because the reason why we have it available for both the operating systems is that they are supposed to work in the same manner. Now I would definitely have to look at, because PDF is one of the areas wherein we do provide it within our suite, but it's essentially one of the products that is dealt or that is provided by other departments, because we feel that this is something that plays or comes in your documentation cycle. But definitely what we can do for you is, if you could just write an email to me, I can get you connected with the right set of people who actually deal with Acrobat, DC and so on, and maybe they can help you out with the same.
Sure, thank you.
And in fact, Amitoj can help you out with the question.
So we have a central team located globally. So do you think how should we convince them that we should move to Adobe tools?
So I would say in that area, I have a colleague of mine who sits in the end, Bharat Prakash, right? So we recently came up with our product, Adobe XML add-on, Data XML add-on, right? That's probably the best fit or the product that you could easily adapt in your organization. How and what is it that you could do in order to acquire it? He can certainly help you out with the same. maybe you could just reach out to us in a booth and we can help you out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Right.
So is it possible, like when I'm importing it, if there is table in it, so how it gets imported into?
So the way the import capability functions now is that we have enabled with you with the options that would allow you to see as in what is it and how is it that you would want to import. So if I consider, let's say there is a particular table style that you have incorporated in your Word document. If you want to import it as it is, that is also an option.
Okay.
Or if you have the styles defined in your FrameMaker, that is also one of the ways that you could just straight away apply that style during the time of import, and once that content is imported, that would automatically acquire that style. Similarly, if you have headings, if you have content, let's say in Word, you have a content in italics, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you want that content to appear, so you would get the options, headings,
So here
content.
it has to be emphasis, right? So automatically that style will get implied, or I need to set the...
Exactly. So you have both the options.
Okay.
You can select it during the time of import, right? Or you could say that bring it as it is.
Because I face this problem with tables, because I have to manually add the rows and then copy in the content into the cells, right? So that's the existing problem with the FrameMaker, because like we get content in Confluence pages or in Word docs. So if I have to just copy paste, it is not possible. When I add a table, I have to add the rows and copy content for each cell.
So I would say, particularly to this question, definitely Bharat can help you out with the same. But on the tables front, from 10 to 17 now, we have done tons of enhancements, right? So you can now easily manage all the tables, the kind of data that you have in those tables, and that's much more easily achievable in FrameMaker 2017 now. So maybe he can help you out with the question. We are coming up with new technologies that would help you out in order to have a documentation, as in that you have vision. Right now, also it would require your insight as well, wherein so that we could make our products much more effective, much more better, the way you have visioned them. So feel free to write to us at this email address. And also we are running a survey wherein basis the feedbacks, the responses that we get from you, there are some cool prizes that you would receive. So that's a lucky draw that we are doing. So you can participate on that survey, and you might get lucky. So feel free to write to us, and if there is anything that you have in your mind or you are visioning that you would want to have in future, maybe something that's not available either with us or with any other organization, we would still want to hear your thoughts, so that we could, basis the roadmap that we have decided, we can try and incorporate the same, because we are quite open to each and every feedback, irrespective of whether the people are using our product or not. Feel free to do that.
So definitely this was a very informative session. We got to know so much about RoboHelp, about FrameMaker, thanks to Bharat as well. And we got to know so many customizations and features. We'll definitely go and explore more. Can we please have a round of applause for Manminder Singh?